the Dallas Mavericks will be without Luka Doncic for a month. Can they stay afloat in the Western Conference even without their best player and MVP candidate? We talk a little bit about that. Plus, Pat Riley shuts down the Jimmy Butler trade talk, or did he? And we're going to look at the Western Conference teams that are prepared to be buyers at this trade deadline. All that plus a new playoff bracket being asked for by teams and more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host here, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. We're going to start off with this. Luka Doncic has been shut down and sidelined now for a month. We knew that he was going to be out for a period of time. Shams Charania tweeted out that he will be reevaluated for a month. So it's like they're going to be without him for a month. And, you know, it does suck, right? And you look at the Dallas Mavericks and the depth that they have on the team. A lot of people think that the Dallas Mavericks right now have more depth than what they did last year in their finals run. And so because of that, they should be able to weather the storm somewhat, right? Am I in any way saying that the Dallas Mavericks are going to stay where they are right now as a number 4 seed in the Western Conference? No, it's going to be tough for them, right? But you look at their record already this season without Luka Doncic, which they do have a winning record without Luka. On top of that, this is a team that, you know, they have a little insulation right now. They're going to drop some. It's going to happen here, right? How far they drop depends on how much this team can rely on Kyrie Irving, Klay Thompson, and their depth to really keep them afloat in that Western Conference. But I look at this and I say, this is a Mavericks team that's well coached. They execute. They have a system. They have a scheme, right? They have a winning record without Luka Doncic so far this season. So all of those things point towards this team being able to, like I said, stay afloat, right? They're gonna drop some. And, you know, when Luka does come back and they're able to incorporate him and he gets back in rhythm, they could go on another run and really fix some things. And it's all about the playoffs, right? The Dallas Mavericks really just want to avoid, falling into that playing area and staying in there. And that's the key thing there. If they're able to do it, great, right? If they're able to do it, great. So far this season, the Dallas Mavericks have a 6-2 record right now without Luka Doncic this season. Now, so it's not a super large sample size, but when you look at it, they have wins over the OKC Thunder, they have wins over the Denver Nuggets, they have wins over the New York Knicks, wins over the Clippers. These are all teams that they have wins over without Luka. On the season so far. So, wins over Utah and teams like that too, but I didn't throw them in there because, that really doesn't matter, right? The Utah Jazz are towards the bottom of the Western Conference. So they have this winning record and they're able to still perform somewhat without him. And it just comes down to they're averaging 116.8 points per game, even without Luka Doncic on the court. So that gives them a nice amount. I'm not saying that it's perfect. I'm not saying that they're going to, come in and still, but, we've seen teams before rally together. And when you look at what they have right now, you still got Kyrie Irving averaging 24 points per game. Klay Thompson still averaging 14. So you still got some scoring punch, but they're going to have to do it by committee, right? By committee, and players are going to have to step up. But luckily for the Dallas Mavericks that they've had players to step up. Now, Derek Lively is also listed as day-to-day right now. He's questionable for tonight's game against the Suns, but, I expect him to be in there more than out. So, again, I'm not too worried about it because I think that a month's time period, that's going to end up being about 12 to 15 games probably. And so because of that, it's a large sample size, make no mistake about it, but it's not so bad to where, and I don't expect the Mavericks to go 4-8 over that stretch or something like that, right? So they have a nice amount of time to get things together. But let me know what you guys think down below. Do you look at this as the Mavericks without Luka and you say, hey, this team could fall pretty far down the standings? Or are you like me? You look at this and say, hey, the Mavericks should be able to weather it pretty well over this time period. Let's real quick. Let's look at the Dallas Mavericks schedule real quick before I end this part of the segment for the next month. So when you look at it, they have Phoenix tonight. They got Portland, Sacramento, Houston, Cleveland, Memphis, the Lakers, Portland again. 2 games against Denver, which is definitely going to be tough. You got New Orleans, OKC, Charlotte, Minnesota, Oklahoma City, and Boston. That puts you right there around the 30-day mark by that Boston game that's on ABC, that's nationally televised Saturday, January 25th. So, again, that's a nice mix of some teams that they should definitely be able to beat. Some teams they've already beat without Luka as well, so that may give them a little bit of edge. So we'll see how they come. Like I said, I think that they have enough to weather the storm. They're not going to necessarily excel, but they have enough to weather the storm. And you still got Kyrie Irving, who's pretty damn talented down there as well. But let me know what you guys think on that down below. Now, one of the biggest topics that's been talked about leading into the trade deadline is Jimmy Butler, right? And Pat Riley has basically shut down this situation with Jimmy Butler, saying this in a press release, and it came out as a tweet saying, "We usually don't comment on rumors, but all this speculation has become a distraction to the team, and it's not fair to the players and coaches. Therefore, we will make it clear, we are not trading Jimmy Butler." Now, Pat Riley's doing what he needs to do to kind of right the ship and stop the questions. And Pat Riley has been around for a long time, and I think he has a different mindset on how media works nowadays. Is this press release going to do anything to stop anything? No, it's not. The speculation is still going to start. The rumors are still going to start, especially we know how Jimmy Butler can be. Jimmy Butler's been really happy for the majority of his time with Miami. But let's not forget how Jimmy Butler can get when he's tired and kind of over a situation. Look at Minnesota. Look at how Philly ended, right? So we know that when Jimmy Butler wants out, he's not afraid to do what he needs to do to get himself out of that equation, right? And so it really comes down to, if it's already being a distraction in the locker room, I think it's really going to come down to how much of that distraction is coming from Jimmy Butler, because Jimmy Butler can disrupt things when he's not happy and when he's trying to get his way. That's not even a knock on Jimmy. When you're in the era where players have as much power as what they do, that's kind of naturally going to happen at times for some teams. And the Miami Heat their hands may be forced, especially if it's becoming a distraction. I always kind of carry the mindset of this. When trade rumors, which NBA players are always involved in some type of rumor of trades or contracts or something like that, when it gets to the point to where it's causing a disruption in your locker room, it's kind of already too far gone, right? Because these are guys that should be able to weather that storm and deal with it, because it is just business. But, like I said, it's really in this part looking to see what Jimmy Butler is doing in a case like this. And so, we'll see what happens. Pat Riley has spoken about this, and this is not the first time he's done something like this, right? So, it is what it is. But for what it's worth, when Pat Riley has said things out in public as far as they're not doing something, it typically has been honest and it has been true. Now, I know a lot of people are going to look at this and saying, oh, of course, is Pat Riley going to come out and say, yeah, we're waiting on the best deals for Jimmy Butler? He's not going to do that, especially if there's already a distraction. But I think it just comes down to what is offered, what's realistically out there, because per what we've talked about before, the Miami Heat are going to be strategic about this. They should and they will. And there aren't a lot of teams that in free agency can give Jimmy what he wants in free agency. And so because of that, it does make some sense to play a little hardball in this to a certain degree. Now, you don't want to do it when it comes at the detriment of the morale in your locker room, but you do want to make sure that you're not putting your team in a worse position. Without Jimmy Butler, the Miami Heat aren't contenders. I mean, they're not even contenders necessarily in the East with Jimmy Butler, but they're definitely not, anything special in the East without Jimmy. So if you're going to move on from Jimmy Butler, you're going to want to damn well make sure that it's something that you're prepared for, something that if you can get anything back, you do. And so when it comes down to that, like, the Miami Heat are not going to be pressed into a situation where they're forced to trade Jimmy in a deal that doesn't do what the team needs it to do. And I think that that's the right mindset to have. I wish more teams would have that kind of mindset, but you got to have that Heat culture. And Heat culture is about to be tested. Make no mistake about it. I think when you look at everything and how this gone, and like I said, how Jimmy can get at times when he's trying to get his way, the culture of the Miami Heat, that's about to be tested big time. And we'll see what the resolve is and how they come out of this on the other side. Do they get a trade done that makes sense for them, or do they wait till the offseason, call Jimmy Butler's bluff, wait to see if he opts out, and then if he does opt out, you try to get a sign and trade done, because there aren't going to be a lot of teams. But as we've seen before as well, once a team kind of locks in, they can make some moves to free up some cap space. So you never know what's going to happen there. So we'll see what happens. This is going to be just an interesting trade deadline overall, as you have teams that are avoiding the second tax apron. But the Miami Heat they listen, that $52 million potential player option that Jimmy Butler has, that could be really hand tying for the Miami Heat. And so they really need to be sure of what their next moves are as they prepare for this situation with or without Jimmy Butler. And it's going to be really really interesting to see what a team like the Miami Heat do to try to stay afloat. Do they spend a couple of years down, right? If Jimmy does Walker, do they find a deal that makes sense to add some talent to this team that makes sense with their young direction that they're going and keep developing players? We'll see, because the Miami Heat went on, finals runs with players that, either were undrafted or low picks or whatever it was. So you want to trust their development, and we'll see what Heat culture gets. All right, next up on the next topic. So this one came out from Mark Stein and others, is in regards to what to expect at the trade deadline. I know there's been a lot of talk coming around. This one does come from Brett Siegel as well. My fault, I said Mark Stein. This actually comes from Brett Siegel. And he talks about how the Western Conference teams, there are a lot of Western Conference teams that are shaped up to be buyers at the trade deadline. Now, yesterday we did an episode on some of the teams to watch out to be some of the biggest sellers. And what Siegel has marked out here is that the Golden State Warriors, Los Angeles Lakers, Phoenix Suns, and Sacramento Kings are all teams that are kind of right now prepared to be buyers if needed. Now, the Kings also, we're watching out to see if they kind of pivot and maybe go a route of trading De'Aaron Fox. But the other three teams all make sense. Now, let's break these teams down. The Golden State Warriors are a team that we've known since the beginning of this season that they want to try to add veteran talent to pair with Steph Curry right now while Steph is still playing at the level that he is to try to go on a run. Now, the Golden State Warriors had an initial run and kind of at the start of the season where they looked like, hey, their defense was rocking and rolling, all that type of stuff was going. And now they're falling all the way down to the 10th seed in the Western Conference. They're still in that playing area. But the question with them is that as they're looking to be buyers, which most people kind of expect them to be, Kuminga, Jonathan Kuminga, that they dangle out there to try to see what they can get done as far as bringing in a veteran talent here. And, it makes sense, right? Now, I still have my questions on if this is the best route for the Golden State Warriors, but, Warriors fans tell me to shut up all the time, so I'm going to shut up and listen to what's being said. But you look at it, they probably, of course, Jonathan Kuminga is there with his $7 million contract. Maybe even Andrew Wiggins as another player as well, with him having 3 years left on his deal that caps out at $30 million on a player option in 26, 27. They've already brought in Dennis Schroeder, which they could even try to turn around and flip Dennis Schroeder later on because they traded for him with enough time for that time period to elapse where they can move him. But that's probably what they're looking to do. It makes sense for the Golden State Warriors, per what we've heard that they want, to be buyers at this trade deadline. What's going to be out there for them to actually buy? That's the question, right? And how they pivot and what type of talent they look to bring in to help this run go on here. But it makes sense. Next up, the Lakers. Now, the Lakers are an interesting place because, it seems like the Lakers do not want to try to go star hunting and make a move like they did for Russell Westbrook because of how that kind of limited the team with assets. They gave up things like that. And, we heard that they only want to use one first-round pick, right? Because they have two that they could theoretically trade, but they only are willing to give up one in a deal to facilitate bringing something in to this team that can help them on their run. Now, the thing with the Lakers it depends on what assets that they want to give up, because the Lakers right now, with them being able to offer their 2029 and 2031 pick, that right now, if the Lakers wanted to call up, for example, and get Jeremy Grant, they can get it done. If they wanted to call up and get Robert Williams, they can get it done. If they wanted to get Walker Kessler, I'm sure that they can get it done. But they are trying to be more protective and mindful of their assets because the Lakers do have to prepare for a life eventually without LeBron James. And the last thing that the Lakers want to do is give up a ton of first-round picks, again, for a roster that then once LeBron leaves, the roster no longer works, right? And I think that that's the place where the Lakers are in where, yes, they want to be buyers, but I think they want to be buyers on a budget. And they aren't going to do the type of things that they've done before. And I also think that teams aren't really necessarily trying to buy out the Lakers and give them a lifesaver here, whereas teams have before as far as giving players to the Lakers just because of them being the Lakers and the Lakers offering something, right? So the Lakers are finding it a little bit more harder of a market for them than what they found in the past, but they are looking to be buyers and make some sense. The Phoenix Suns. Now, this is the team on the list that it makes sense for them to be buyers, but it's probably going to be the hardest for them to. The Phoenix Suns are $30 million into the second tax apron. And keep in mind, when you're into that second tax apron, not only can you not aggregate salaries to get a player of a larger contract, so they can't combine two smaller contracts to get a player of the value of those two combined deals, they also cannot trade multiple players in trades anyway. So they even couldn't do a thing where they're trading two players for two players and all the money eventually works out. They can't even trade multiple players in the same deal. So the Suns are the team that wants to be buyers, but there's really not a realistic path for them to get there unless teams just want the pieces that they have to offer on some of the larger contracts. And it's going to be if the Phoenix Suns are able to swing a deal, it's going to be really interesting to watch what that deal has as far as the long-term implications on the second tax apron for them. How much further does it sit them into that? But even then, because they can only match salaries, they may be fine there. Like, I mean, they have Yusuf Nurkic, which they reportedly do want to offer, right? That's $18 million. But again, they can't combine that with anything else. So you're looking at all these contracts as far as him, maybe Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal. You're looking at all these contracts as far as what can you just get done for just that contract. And that's the part that's going to be hard for the Phoenix Suns to thread in this case. And so, not that I disagree with Siegel and his reporting here. It's just watch out for these teams because it's not going to be as straightforward of a line for some of these teams to be buyers at this year's deadline, but we'll see. Now, last topic before we go. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, mainly because I do want to have a roundtable discussion on this with the fellas, everybody on the channel. But it has been reported now that from Tim Bontemps that several teams are pushing for the league to move away from conference-based playoff seeding to do a 1-16 format. And that's one of the more interesting things in this. And here's the thing, right? So I took a look at this just to see what would happen if this season, for example, the seeding was 1-16 regardless of conference, right? And the thing with that is that there would still be 6 teams in the Eastern Conference as if the playoffs started right now today. So that would be 10 Western Conference teams, 6 Eastern Conference teams. And here's the thing when it comes down to that. You got to keep in mind travel. You got to keep in mind all of this competitiveness. Like if the NBA went to this, we would have never had like the Miami Heat's historical run when they ran to the finals, right? Now, some could say that, okay, yeah, that run was fine and it was entertaining, but what about the actual value of the finals itself and the playoffs itself? And that's fair. But while it makes sense for teams, especially with all the Western Conference teams, when you look at it like how some of those, the bottom of the tier Western Conference teams, like for example, the San Antonio Spurs right now would be out of the play-in if the playoffs started today. That same Spurs team would be the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. So it makes sense that teams are going to look at that and say, hey, maybe we should do this. But I just don't think financially the NBA is ever going to do. Let me not say ever, but I think it'll be a long time for the NBA does this just for the competitive nature. And you always have that Cinderella team in the Eastern Conference that goes on a crazy run, and that is unfortunately good for ratings. And for the league to go and want to push parity as much as they have, I just don't know if they can realistically go to removing the conferences and just doing 1-16. Now, it would be very interesting, and it would bring the creme de la creme as far as to the top and make the playoffs theoretically even more entertaining. But I do think that the conferences for a reason. So unless you plan on doing away with conferences as a whole, I just don't see that happening. And that's just my personal opinion. I know that people are going to have a difference of opinion. That's why I want to have really the roundtable discussion on this. So let me know your guys' thoughts down below. I'll see if I can get all the guys together over the weekend and we could try to do a roundtable where we all give our thoughts on this. But let me know your thoughts down below. Make sure you guys are following the show at NBA Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything basketball related, or trying to be at least. And I'll see you guys the next time I feel like making a video. Probably tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.